Tsukuyomi? More like suck your mummy.
This is a prime example of when I would surrender.
Today, we become legends.
So of course, Hi-Rez got through their terrible hangover that was Baba Yaga and are back to getting sloshed on the town with the new god releases. The latest installment being, of course, Naruto. I mean Tsukuyomi. Hi-Rez did really well on the lore aspect of this release. Tsukuyomi is pretty much known to kill anyone who looks at him the wrong way, which is represented perfectly in Smite by his fucking bullshit one-shot damage numbers. It seems that literally every ability in this guy's kit is comparable to some other ability that already exists on an assassin, but with 2 times the damage and way cooler. Yeah, even in a rant, I can throw a bone and admit that this god is really fucking cool. But take his 2 for example. 2 large AoE hits, followed by a smaller hit in front of him that gives mobility. If you thought I was describing Susanoo's 1 there, I won't hold it against you. These 2 abilities share striking similarities, and yet Tsukuyomi's take on this 3-part ability is better in nearly every way. And Susanoo's 1 is already an incredibly strong ability compared to most. Let's just do a quick comparison here. First 2 hits, 140 plus 50% scaling for Stormcatter, 135 plus 50% scaling for Kusarigama. Seems fair, right?
Absolutely.
Wrong.
Third hit, 70 plus 25% scaling for Stormcatter, 290 plus 80% scaling for Kusarigama. Yeah, where Susanoo's final hit does half damage, Tsukuyomi's final hit does almost double damage. But let's add on the CCs these abilities provide. Stormcatter, Kusarigama, 2.5 second disarm into 1.4 second stun. Yeah, take away the entire 3.9 seconds of CC this ability gives and you would still have an ability way stronger than Susanoo's 1, which is already considered a great ability among assassins. The only benefit Susanoo gets here over Tsukuyomi is that he can auto attack in between, but being able to AA cancel versus 210 plus 55% of power in extra damage and 3.9 seconds of CC, this does not seem like a fair comparison. To prove my point even further, and because I have way too much time on my hands, I manually calculated the average base damage and scaling of all damaging assassin abilities in the game, excluding ultimates, to compare Kusarigama to the average. The average damage of assassin basic abilities is 342.59 plus 90.92% scaling, which will round up to 343 plus 91% of physical power. This is the average damage an assassin ability will do to you, excluding ultimates and abilities that don't actually deal damage. Now compare that to Kusarigama. Yeah, as you may have noticed, this is close on double the average for scaling and well over 1.5 times the average in base damage. Not to mention that some of the assassin abilities used for this average are single target and or have no CC. This ability is AoE and has 3.9 seconds of CC as well as 33% movement speed. I was very generous in these calculations too. For abilities like Thor's Hammer or Awilix's Feather Step, I made sure to count their damage at the maximum they can do, so final swing chain on Feather Step and double tapping a god with the hammer. The only assassin ability in the entire game that does more damage than Kusarigama is Fenrir's Brutalize at 660 plus 200%. However, this ability leaves you vulnerable while channeling, is hard countered by cripples or jumps, and has a grand total of 0 CC. Oh, and it's also single target. Yeah, if you haven't got the idea by now, Kusarigama is literally the best assassin basic ability in the entire game by a wide margin, not only for damage but also for CC and versatility. But moving on, been a long time since I spent that long ranting about just one ability. Last time I went this hard was probably Baron's release ultimate. But speaking of ultimates, Tsukuyomi's ultimate is also busted. Who would have guessed? Doing the damage calculations, but for just assassin ultimates this time, we get 579.72 plus 131.66% scaling in damage, which will round up to 580 base and 132% of physical power. So considering that Tsukuyomi's 2 did roughly 1.75 times the average damage, where do you think his ultimate lies on the scale? 1.5 times maybe? 1.75? 2 times? Try 2.25 times the average damage numbers of assassin ultimates. Piercing Moonlight does 1300 base damage and 300% scaling, dwarfing the average numbers and only really contested by Neja's Windfire Wheels at 1020 base and 370% scaling, probably similar damage numbers all things considered. And once again, I made sure to take the most optimistic damage numbers for my average calculation, making sure to add crit damage for Neja's ultimate, considering Susanoo's ult at fully charged, etc., while also not counting ults that do no damage such as Bastet or varying damage such as Nemesis, so if anything these are high-end estimates for damage. Now of course, ultimates aren't always about damage. Many of them have extra utility or CC, and while Piercing Moonlight gives incredible mobility and has insane range, it doesn't come with any CC, which does let it down a little. But come on people, can you really complain about 1300 base damage and 300% scaling? That's far more than even the most powerful mage ultimates, which are supposed to be the hardest hitting abilities in the entire game. This ult can legitimately one-shot carries from full HP in a realistic game once you add on Heartseeker damage and any other buffs he may have at the time. That's where we draw the line. In fact, the line was drawn about 500 miles back, high-res just don't seem to care anymore. I've likened this god release to Baron Samedi at his debut based on fun factor and how broken he is right now, but the biggest striking resemblance to that era is that Tsukuyomi gets 50% damage mitigations while firing the beams for this ultimate. Yeah, not only can you hit from halfway across the map, you can also use it while being dived or if you're about to get hit by a big mage ultimate to just take half damage for the duration. In fact, it's even better than 50% mitigations because it's actually 50% damage reduction, which also applies to true damage. Yeah, you can even half the amount of damage you take versus true damage abilities like Circuit Ultimate. Baron's release ultimate worked very similarly, but at least Baron was very slow while channeling. Tsukuyomi moves at normal speed while channeling this ability. Take away this damage reduction completely and it would still be one of the best ultimates in the game. This is just not needed. So we've gone a whole rant so far without mentioning cooldowns. This is normally something I harp on because it's an overlooked aspect that can make or break a god, so how does Tsukuyomi fare in this department? Well, he has an ability with a 2-second cooldown that creates a 50% movement speed differential, so that's cool. So you might turn into me and start furiously fapping over the Smite wiki page and realise Tsukuyomi's lowest cooldown ability is 10 seconds, way longer than 2. But listen here, young Padawan. With 40% cooldown reduction, which you almost always have as an assassin because their items are broken, it goes down to 6 seconds. And would you look at that? The Shuriken store is having a sale and you get 4 seconds off your purchase as long as you come into the store to pick up your Shuriken and don't have it delivered. So yeah, 6 minus 4 is 2, and boom, you now have a cooldown lower than Hebo 1 on an ability that steals 25% movement speed, so basically no one is ever getting away from you ever. Oh, but if they did somehow manage to get away, you have another 25% slow in your kit to keep them there that also gives true damage for some reason. I guess Titans still haven't learned their lesson about giving physicals true damage even after the One True King was one-shotting tanks with his ultimate. But of course, this is all in good fun. His damage numbers are way too high and the devs obviously know that. Any amount of internal testing with even 5 people could reveal that 1300 base and 300% scaling is far too much damage, but the god design in itself is some of the most fun I've had with a new god release since Baron. And in a way, this release reminds me a lot of him. A super fun core design, 2 copies of the god in every single casual game, and ridiculously bloated numbers, which will hopefully get nerfed in a reasonable amount of time. I have no major issues with OP god releases, my problems come when those releases are left OP and on top of the meta for months on end, such as Haim and Persephone. That's when it gets frustrating and stale. So hopefully we can get some reasonable Suku nerfs in the coming patches that can balance him at least a little bit to avoid that happening. Let me know your thoughts on him down below, if you're having tons of fun with him or if you're already tired of getting one-shot by him, either way, and I'll catch you guys in another video later on. Have a great day, and peace out you nerds.